Welcome to the LaunchFamily Podcast, where we make sense of modern parenting one real conversation at a time. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, a mom of six, former teacher, and your guide through the twists and turns of raising kids while trying to keep up with everything else that life has. Today's episode is for every parent trying to figure out how to hold their career and caregiving identity in the same hand, especially in the early years when the baby's crying, the toddler's climbing furniture, and your inbox is still full. I'm joined by Ling, a leadership coach and the founder of Stork and Spark. She supports career-driven parents navigating pregnancy, parental leave, and the return to work transition with clarity, confidence, and community. So from NICU journeys to high-pressure jobs, from IVF to real talk about PTO that's not actually restful, Kelly brings a fresh, honest voice to what it really means to grow a career while growing a family. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jessica, for having me and for that mouthful of an intro. It's so excited to be here and share about a little bit more about what I do and tackle these tough questions.
Oh, I love it. I mean, working mom of six right now, right? So I've lived through a lot of these things that we're going to talk about today, and you have your own experience too with this. So I'm really excited to dive into your insights and your background. So the support that you have for working parents is one of those like really transformational times as they're either welcoming a child, they're welcoming a new child, maybe they're preparing for their first child. Can you share a little bit more about your personal journey into motherhood and what led you into launching Stork and Spark?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, right now I'm a mother of two boys, so 3 and 1. So my motherhood journey started nearly 4 years ago. And at the time, I was about 12 years into my career, so mostly working in healthcare and tech, and I self-identify as someone in my target audience, so kind of that ambitious, career-driven person. That was kind of my identity, even growing up in school, right, all the way through college and beyond. Like, what is the job that I'm going to get, and that is who I become. And then you get married, and then you start thinking about family, and all these kind of questions of like, how do you integrate family? How do you prioritize your time? Some of these things that just didn't come up for me, even though I was in a family with two working parents, still hadn't crossed my mind until it became a more of a reality. And so, maybe like about 5 years ago now, we started trying for our first kid, and was having trouble with it, and so that took a bit of time. Fortunately, I was with a company that had really strong fertility benefits, and so did my husband, and so we were actually able to just kind of jump into IVF after a few months of trying without success, and bank up some embryos. And so we just jumped into the deep end with fertility treatments because it was covered, which was awesome. And so that kind of gave us a little bit of an insurance like policy, I guess, for kiddos. So then we went with one, were unsuccessful the first time around. Fortunately, we didn't lose the embryo, so we were able to try a transfer again, and we were successful. So that was really exciting. Again, this was maybe 2 years into my most recent corporate role before I started my current company. And then I was on that pregnancy journey at work. And fortunately, I didn't have too rough of a first trimester. And so was able to kind of keep going in the way that I always had been, and was able to share the news excitedly with folks. But then at around 20 weeks, you have that anatomy scan. And my anatomy scan showed that I had a condition called vasoprevia, which is a very rare disorder. And it's something that the solution for is to basically have your child born by C-section at 34 weeks. Anything longer would put them in danger. And for me, it meant moving into the hospital in antepartum, kind of starting at week 25 viability for the 2 months before baby was born. So that kind of shifted my world. Unfortunately, it was first baby, and so there wasn't too many other responsibilities at home, but I kind of found community through this and found there were a lot of other moms kind of in hospitals at the same time with this condition around the world. And so kind of found my community and Facebook groups that way, and so many of them had toddlers at home. So it was like a lot of this, I felt lucky that I still had the time to be able to go in and not have all these other responsibilities at home. Anyways, that was my first kiddo. Everything was smooth though. He was in the NICU for about 6 weeks. And so during all this time, so first my parental leave was accelerated, or going on leave was accelerated because baby was born 6 weeks early. And then I was, again, fortunate to be in California at a company with strong leave. So I had about 6 months to manage and navigate. which I really needed because being a NICU mom, having kind of all these, you never know what to expect, but I think this was even more extreme than like a traditional experience. Kind of coming back from postpartum and on the other side, it was a lot. Um, but I kind of made it through and figured out the care and all that good stuff. So I was able to then go back to work, and I was at a fast-paced company, so 6 months of leave. Things are totally different on the other side. I came back to work. Fortunately, even before I went on leave, worked with my manager to figure out a new kind of scope or what is it that I wanted to lean into when I came back. And so as I came back, it was more about transitioning into a new role rather than kind of just picking up where things left off, which was really helpful to come back to, because I didn't feel like I needed to revisit everything that happened. Rather, I could focus on a new role. That was my first leave. Then kind of got pregnant soon thereafter, not through IVF, amazingly. And also during this full year, kind of understood, okay, how did my priorities shift? What did I need, especially moving from one kid to two? And gosh, Jessica, you're at six. I can't even imagine that difference. But I learned a lot about myself, my priorities, and this knack of like entrepreneurial spirit plus kind of advocacy for folks both in the employee space and now pregnant employees. And so that then moved me to, after my second leave, deciding this was the time to lean in and launch my own business. I had been coaching and consulting a bit on the side just from kind of having a coaching skill set, but really chose to lean in on, hey, there is a gap in support for career driven folks who are navigating the pregnancy leave and support and return process. I was fortunate to be in the state that I'm in with an organization that understood and kind of felt supported. So they actually gave me a helpful like framework and playbook a little bit for what I'm now bringing with Stork and Spark, which again is focused on how do we bring that advocacy in earlier at the point of pregnancy, sharing the news, creating your leave plan before going out on leave and coming back. So long story to share kind of how I got here today, but my fast-paced job, kind of a crazy first pregnancy, and my two boys are the inspiration for creating Stork and Spark.
Yeah, you have that like rooted experience of like I've been in your shoes and also like on this like extreme level too at some points of time. So one thing that you kind of started to like touch on was like this idea of identity and how our priorities might shift or our identity might shift or how we might think of ourselves differently in the professional world. So how, either from your experience or the work that you do with Stork and Spark, like how does becoming a parent shift how we see ourselves in the professional world, like our own reflection?
Yeah. So I think this one, especially if you had a kind of experience like mine where career was your identity, not just when you were in the career, but even before as you were planning for what you were going to be when you grow up. It can be jarring to have this identity that you own and then suddenly shift into you have this like huge priority, which is about keeping a human alive. And also like your heart has expanded, right? And the single most important thing to you is your family and this new like human that you brought in and are bonding with. And so if you're not used to making like time for maybe yourself or maybe your partner, because if you and your partner maybe are both super career oriented, so it wasn't an issue in the past, you, you have to make time for a baby once you're a parent, right? Because they take up time, they take up resources, and you want to be there and present for it. You don't want to treat it like an obligation. You want to enjoy that newborn to the extent that you can. And so the identity shift kind of happens of like, hey, your whole life was centered around career. Now you have to expand the pie. And I don't think it's a fixed pie, but it's still a bit of a pie, right? And so how do you reshift how you spend your time and energy and mind share with this new person? So then it's when you come back to work, what do you bring forward? So now that I'll get into kind of working with some of my clients, oftentimes when you share the news about pregnancy or when you come back, we can like be apologetic or minimize the disruption as becoming a parent. You can say, "Oh, don't worry, like I'll stay on track. Don't worry, things will go back to how they were, or like this won't impact my work," and almost come from an assumption that it might, and therefore I'm going to minimize that. So where we work together and where I'm kind of trying to push from a broader perspective is, hey, let's go in with first excitement that we're having this baby, right? Not apologies, but rather, hey, like this is this awesome thing that's happening to my family and to the world because it is awesome to bring little humans into the world. And then as you transition or transform into a parent, you do change. And so a lot of times I talk about honoring that transformation rather than trying to get back to how things were. Honor that you've changed. Some things may be different. Yes, mom brain might be a thing, and people talk about that mental capacity that maybe isn't firing at the same 100% as before, whether it's due to lack of sleep or other things. At the same time, you are amazing at prioritization, and you don't take BS anymore. And sometimes you just let the things fall off your shoulders that really could have gotten to you before because it is no longer important or doesn't feel as important as it used to be. And so you have some of these superpowers on the other side. And so to me, it's a lot about recognizing that you have changed and there are some things that are awesome with that change. Now, how is that going to show up when you're at work and how do you talk about it?
Yeah. What are some of those like invisible like pressures that they may feel as they come back to work or maybe as they're like preparing for leave? Because I mean, I'm reflecting on my own experience of, I'm always so excited when we find out that we're pregnant and we're having another little baby and the kids are all excited and everything. Like there's just so much joy that's coming. But then it's also on the other side of that of like, oh my gosh, well, what is this actually going to look like? Can I take a couple days or can I take a couple weeks? Like I'm an entrepreneur. And so if I step away,
Mm,
from the business what actually happens. Um,
yeah.
so
Yes.
I mean, my case is probably a little unique there where I have like six children and a little bit different of a position, but what are some of those invisible pressures leading up to or kind of coming back from that transition of having a little one?
Yeah, such a good question. And I can take it from both, like if you have that more traditional corporate role as well as the entrepreneur role. But to your point, I haven't met that many moms of six. So just so amazing that you and your family are able to do that. And we're still here on this podcast today. So on the corporate side, for many moms, it starts from that moment you see that you're pregnant on the pregnancy strip, right? Maybe you're 6 weeks pregnant because you're super eager to find out. Maybe you're 2 months into it, you're already partway down the journey. Um, Maybe you have extreme morning sickness, right? And something has clued you in, like, hey, like maybe you're pregnant. And so in that first trimester, so oftentimes the like societal push is to not share that you're pregnant for good reasons, right? To share like, hey, maybe the baby isn't viable or it's a private thing you can share later. It's not relevant to work. Why do they need to know? Um, my push is a bit contrarian where it's if you feel safe to do so at work, share as early as possible because that kind of mental load that you were talking about a little bit starts with carrying this big secret during the trimester one where you're potentially sick as a dog, you're physically not your best, maybe you're mentally not your best, and you're also really excited for this change. And then the kind of ask is to just not tell anybody. So suddenly that takes up a huge amount in your brain, right? You have all your other responsibilities, plus you're holding on to this big secret. Plus you're worried, like, hey, do people know? Like, I didn't order a drink at happy hour. Like, could they tell? Like, oh, I just like threw up in the bathroom. Could they hear me? There's all this stuff that goes on just in those first few months. And so one of like my suggestions to kind of get over that or give yourself that space and power back is to share early, share with confidence and excitement that this is happening, and then start to build the narrative around what's happening rather than other people build that for you. So I think that's one area where there can be stress. And then the next one, the next one is around the leave planning, right? And so this is both you and your manager. So for you, you want to make sure that you plan if you're a manager yourself that your team is taken care of, that if you're on like promotion track or things are going for you that you've kind of ticked and tied all the things before you go out on leave. At the same time your manager is probably like, hey, like that's awesome for you, and what are we going to do while you're on leave? How are we going to plug this? And so it's a stress for both of you. And so we also work a lot around, okay, you've told your news early. Now you have a lot of time to plan, sometimes even half a year to plan what leave looks like so that everyone around you is moving into helping you operate your coverage plan in confidence. So those are two areas. If you're at like a kind of a traditional or corporate job, there's an actual leave policy and you're planning to take that full leave. Now, for folks like yourself or entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, which is a whole nother pathway, especially for working moms, right? Who have the skills and are looking to own their time and take it back a bit. So you dictate your leave policy, and for the most part, you're getting unpaid leave if you take the leave. And so, what does that look like, and how does it look, and how do you start to prepare for it? How do you share it with your clients? And while I don't have like the perfect recipe, I think a lot of it goes into it's the same message around sharing with confidence, sharing with your clients if you have a brand presence, kind of share the news if you're open to that with kind of the world that you're in, so that they can support and follow you. If you have the means or a trusted partner, is there someone that you can help temporarily cover your work while you're gone, someone that you trust, which is also then fun because you're potentially providing economic opportunity to someone else while you're on leave. And then ideally you've done some financial planning, you have some of that cushion so that you can take off, the month, 2 months, or however long you've deemed appropriate for yourself, because again, you create your own leave policy. And so there's double-edged sword there. I think the other thing is you what was I gonna say? You know yourself best. And so whereas when you're with a company, they have a policy and you just lean into it. For you, yeah, maybe a couple weeks is all you need, right? Or maybe you want to take that whole year. This is a time to kind of reset and be present. And what else can you do to kind of sustain your business while you're taking a little bit of a pause? And so there's some work to be done around there too, whether you're bringing it to somebody else or you're working on automations or brand building or whatnot. So you can kind of slow roll your way back.
Yeah, I love both of those points. And like my corporate job, I was a teacher, so I never like worked in corporate or anything. But I'm thinking about like navigating the lead conversation that I had with HR and my building principal, and my colleagues that were like my peers that we were teaching the same, and so would have to like prep lesson plans for like the first 3 weeks of our maternity leave was like standard within the district, and so
Yes.
there is that little bit of like, I feel like safety in knowing when you're in that role, like, okay, there is a process. Like, you're not the first person to ever get pregnant or have a child within the company. So there is a process there. So there's like some comfort in that
Yeah.
aspect. I think too, like one of the things that um the question about and we're gonna kind of go off script just because I want to like pick your brain, but
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I had my second kiddo. um my boys are about 12 months apart, and so I had found out that I was pregnant like at the very beginning of the school year, my very first year teaching. And so what what kind of shifts do we maybe expect when you're parenting multiple little ones? Like I had a little bit more complexity because my second one had some medical complications when he was around 4 months old. And so I could share a little bit more about that here in a minute. But just in general, like how are you planning like after baby number two or after baby number one? How are you kind of navigating those things and those kind of complexities in addition to working?
Yeah. Really good question. And yeah, we may or may not be done. So I will have more to learn from you. But what I'll say, when you have that first baby, your world is rocked and like nothing has ever been harder. And then you have a second baby and you realize how easy it was just having one baby. So not to minimize that experience at all, because it truly, truly rocks your world. But suddenly when you're on two babies, you're just like in your case, one was still a baby, right? You cannot ignore their needs. You're on 24/7 for them, just like you are for the newborn. And so the lack of sleep and everything that you had with the first one just intensifies with the second one. Ideally, there's support around you, right? Your partner, your parents, friends, etc. So you have some village help. But it does get significantly harder, I think, with number two. Now there's the debate, and I can't weigh in on like from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, so on and so forth. I have heard, when you have two, and if there's two parents, at least one, each one can take one. When you move to three or more, it's more about zone defense, where there's like certain areas that you're in charge of, and when kids flow in and out of there, you're in charge. But I think it does get it gets harder before it gets easier. What I'll say in my experience and what I've seen as a trend, though I don't know if the data backs it up, is after second baby is when a lot of moms decide, okay, my traditional career is not right anymore. And I'm so ambitious, and so I'm going to try something different. I actually think the data shows that a lot of moms stop after first baby. But there might be like a segmentation of like, okay, if you look at everyone, moms stop work after first baby, or at least take that break. If you look at the folks that I talk to on a more regular basis who like career has been everything that they're super focused on, then after that, have that first baby, they're like, I'm going to go back to how things were, right? I'm just going to go right back onto my ladder and keep going. So, and first baby, you kind of can, right? Because it's a little bit easier to manage with just one. So then you go back to that role and maybe you get pregnant or more babies or your priority shift or whatnot. And so after that second one comes, and as we were talking about, you just the time that you didn't think you have even less of is there. And so it forces you to rethink, how are you going to continue, right? You can still stay in your role, and there's childcare options and different things to make that work. Or if it is important to you to take back control of your time and have that flexibility and different things that newer parents crave, there are other ways to go about it. And what I see is oftentimes that happens after baby number two.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because I transitioned out of the classroom as I had just had baby number 3. Like I was on maternity leave
Oh,
baby number 3 and I'm like, okay, I cannot sustain this anymore because I had all my boys were pretty close together. I mean, my oldest is 9 right now and we go down all the way to 6 months. So our kids are kind
amazing.
of packed together.
Yeah.
But I think too, like just reflecting on my own journey there, and then talking, kind of coming back to one of the other points that you had mentioned of, one being like you can kind of like flex things a little bit with your job, especially if you have a partner where there's a little bit more flexibility, there's additional coverage. Two, adds additional complexity, just because now you're managing two different schedules. Like I remember like the newborn, well, I mean, we're currently like in that stage, but like the newborn, like eating every 3 to 4 months or 3 to 4 hours, excuse me. 3 4 months, what's happening.
That's
But
right.
then also like rest times and nap times and school, all of the things that kind of add into the complexities of just the child's schedule now, in addition to your own. So I want to come back to this also idea of this myth of like doing it all, right? Like, oh yeah, if I've got one kid, I can still do it all. Oh, I've got two kids, I can still do it all. Like you do have systems and supports in place, most of the time, but what do you see parents struggling with the most when it comes to like this work-life balance post children?
Yes. The work-life balance question, again, really tough. And again, I think if we haven't done the introspective question of what does balance look like for you and what does it look like for you right now, it can always feel unattainable because it's this thing that maybe you see on Instagram or you see people post inspirational quotes on, or you see what you think it is happening. You have this kind of idea of in your head, but you maybe, if you haven't done the work to like write down, what does balance look like for me, or what does it look like for me this week, what does it look like for me today, and really understand, okay, this is like these little things are what success can look like. It can just always feel like a moving goalpost or unattainable. And so the push or the guidance or what we work through is to answer those exact questions. How might we reframe balance? What does it look like for you in this current season? What did it look like with one baby, and now that you have two, three, or four, what does that look like? What can come off your plate? What can hop back on? Are you aware of some of the kind of biases or assumptions that you do make on what balance is, and are you okay taking some of those off? And so examples of what this like tangibly could look like is, how clean is your house? And like, how do you need to do the dishes or not? Is it okay if dishes are in the sink? Is it okay if things are all over the floor? What's your level of like tolerance for mess? Or things like when you're at a place where you have six kids, like, you literally don't have six people driving kids to all their different activities, right? And so are you comfortable with the fact that like not everyone is going to have an after school activity at exactly the same time or whatnot? And so just getting comfortable with redefining balance for your current season, and then like even writing it out so that when you get into those states of like, I don't have it all, or how am I supposed to have it all? Or you're starting to get into like comparison zone of what you see, you can go back to like, hey, it's not about comparing, it's about what success looks like for us right now in this current season, in our current situation, which isn't unique to you, it's unique to your family.
Yeah, I love that perspective too, because I think social media has a really funny way of the comparison sort of mindset. And I mean, I follow a bunch of like large families too on social media because I'm like, okay, I need all the tips and tricks. Like, what are y'all doing for organization and stuff? Just because like the sheer amount of things in our home, like clothing for 8 people is a lot of clothing, a lot of laundry, a lot of dishes just with one meal. Like we've gone through a
Yes.
whole dish set plus some in one meal. And so I love that you talk also about what that looks like for you personally, right? And setting up those routines, the organization of your household running to also match and value what those things are that are kind of highest priority. I want to talk a little bit more about like the work and the community that you've created as well. So, you run group coaching cohorts for career-minded parents. What kinds of supports are most of these parents like hungry for? Or what are the topics of conversation that you're helping them navigate through those cohorts?
Yeah, yes. So in the group cohorts that I work with, generally I'm working with folks in this season who are either pregnant, on leave, or returning to work, or there are some who are, a couple years into return to work but are planning to come to work. And so we go through that journey. We talk about how to, like, if you haven't shared the news yet, how are you going to share it? What does that look like? Let's practice it together. A lot of times folks don't find me until they're kind of part way down the pregnancy. And so I always try to get them before they've shared the news, but oftentimes a little bit after. So then though, we talk about, well, how did you share the news? And if you could reframe it, what would that sound like? And like, hey, you still have the opportunity to now go talk about it with confidence kind of thing. So we go through some strategic points during pregnancy leave and return to work on how to grow your career during this time. So like, for example, when pregnant, some of those key points are when and how you share the news, engaging in career conversations with your manager while pregnant to remind them like, hey, I'm still ambitious. I still do want that promotion. Or I still do want that scope change. Like, please don't not offer me like projects or different things because you think I can't handle it. So controlling that narrative and then putting that plan together, right? That elevates everybody. When you're on leave, we talk about, okay, how do you be present when you're actually on leave? And now you have peace of mind because you have such a great leave plan. Then moving into so especially if you have a dedicated amount of leave, and maybe this is your first or second child, so you have some time to yourself while you're on leave, opportunities to build your village or network a bit, or some folks even end up like recruiting because they do want a different job, or they're out there networking, learning about different moms or parents with different styles. And so I talk a lot about building your village while you're on leave, and using it to network and to understand, hey, how do I return back, or like, what did you do to be successful? And then this is also your time to design your support system for childcare. What kind of boundaries are you going to need when you come back? And then start to set those up so that when you return to work, you can communicate confidently what your boundaries are and then hold them and stick to them. That's one point. And then the other point when you're back, I say, is this is about your advocacy period, right? You spent so much time planning for it, and now you're advocating for yourself, you're advocating for your family, you're advocating for others who might become pregnant or are pregnant at work. So there's a lot of leading by example. And like stepping back, you're constantly reassessing fit of your organization and your values and priorities. Is this still a fit for what you need in today's season? So that's kind of the journey that we go through together wherever you are on that journey. And then if you haven't reached a milestone, the advice is for you. And if you have reached it, you're sharing your experience with the broader group, and or thinking through, okay, if you had the opportunity again, what might you change or how could you improve and bring that into your next experience or your journey going forward.
Yeah. For listeners who want to engage in one of the cohorts or just connect with you to learn more about your coaching, where can they find you?
Yes, yes, yes. I try to find you where you are. I have a few groups. I do have a Facebook group. I have a LinkedIn group. And then I put a lot of content out on LinkedIn so folks can simply follow me on LinkedIn or subscribe to my newsletter, which I can send you all the links to after this. Another couple of places. So I recently joined an amazing community called the Society of Working Moms, where I'm a coach in residence there. And so we have the community has weekly group coaching, and I'm one of the coaches that facilitates that coaching. And then this fall, there will be a new cohort, like I was talking about, for those in the season of life who are newly pregnant, on leave or returning to work. And it is a mix of community building plus coaching to return to work with confidence.
Amazing, amazing. And we'll include all of the links too in the show notes for listeners that are listening in. We have, before we close out, we have a couple questions that were written in to our AI parenting coach, Emmy, at Launch Family. So I'd love to get your take on a couple of these. So the first one is, I'm back from leave and everything at work has changed. How do I rebuild my confidence in understanding what my role looks like now?
Yeah. Um, So great question. And before we get into that, I just love that you have an AI coach, and I do love integrating AI into the coaching that I do. What I'm finding recently, because it's so new, a lot of times the coaching conversations I have are like after someone has had a pretty good discussion with their AI partner, and then they're bringing their insights and reactions to me for discussion. And then from there, we're moving into, okay, let's create some more prompts, right, that you can do between now and the next time we chat. So it's been such an awesome way to integrate and like improve the quality of coaching interactions. But so your question was, everything has changed. How do I come back with confidence?
Yeah.
This happens so often. In fact, I actually just did a poll on LinkedIn asking, how often do you go back to the same role, or do you have a new manager, new role, new role, new manager? And less than 50% of the time, at least in my poll, do you actually just go back to your same job? Like more often than not, something is going to change. So how do you go back? So I think a lot of this starts with, well, again, ideally, did you have those proactive discussions while pregnant? Did you talk about career scope and different things, so that when you're coming back, even if it's a new role, new team, you have something documented to point to or talk to? If you don't have that, that is okay too. It is a starting point. The other piece is, let's say you're still on leave. We talked about, what does your support system look like? What do your boundaries look like? What hours are you going to be online, offline? Do you have a pumping schedule that you need like specific time blocked, etc.? So preparing for that before you come back, so that when you come back, even if there's chaos around you in terms of what is your role and scope, you know what you need for accommodations, or what you need to be successful as you jump in terms of your boundaries. And so knowing what those are and then over communicating them is going to be really helpful to give you that sanity and structure. And the one thing I push here is, while sometimes it can feel uncomfortable to like over communicate what you need, everybody's pregnancy and parent journey is unique and different. So even if you work with a lot of parents, it doesn't mean that they can fully empathize with your situation. And so you have to define it and communicate it. And if it changes, that's okay. Just constantly communicate. I think knowing what that is confidently and being able to share that is one thing. And then I like to think about returning to work as like, hey, potentially it's like a new job, right? So if you were taking a new job, how would you onboard? Well, questions would you ask your manager? What was your 30, 60, 90-day plan look like? How would you set goals if you were a new employee? Because especially if you took off several months, or you're coming back to a new job, new role, that is the scenario. And so give yourself the opportunity to take this on like a new job, new role, and kind of use that framework and mindset for the folks around you as well, so that you can onboard. The one I'll add here too, in my research and my experience with clients, and a lot of kind of data out there, the ball is dropped for new parents on return to work. So there's a lot of times a lot of HR support, a lot of manager support leading up to leave, because policy focuses on leave. And then coming back, there's just nothing. You're just dropped in, and either folks are like inundating you with uh, asks and you're kind of catching up, or nobody is, because your role has changed, your role has changed, your manager has changed, and then you're like, hey, do I still have a job here, or potentially like at risk? So there's the ball is often dropped at that point of return. This can be addressed through proactive communication, both on your own boundaries for your needs, as well as just leaning into those career conversations, or taking charge of the confusion, turning chaos into structure.
I love that perspective, because I think it's so true, right? Of like everything, all the things that you hear about leading up to the pregnancy, leading up to the leave, are like the legal things that need to happen to protect your job most of the time. And so then when you come back, there's like, okay, well, what does this actually look like? What role? I love that you talk about proactive communication, and also just like consistently bringing up the communication, like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't make that meeting because I have my pump, like I have to set up and go pump, or whatever it is. I know that oftentimes too, one of the things that I experienced as an educator and a teacher was that there's just so much going on. Like everyone is in their own lanes, that it's not to disregard or like to dismiss what your experience is. But oftentimes if they're not living through it, they don't realize how it's going to impact you. So I love that
Yeah.
proactive communication piece too, of like, okay, I know that they're not doing this just to like spite me either, because hormones are all over the place postpartum still too. Like they're talking about how it even lasts beyond even the first year of your baby. So just give yourself some grace here.
Yes. Yes to all of that. And I'll share like my own principle is just assume positive intent, right? Folks aren't meaning, even if there's a misstep, it's not, I believe, for the most part, it's not intentional, right? And so how do you not take it personally and but still advocate for yourself and speak up if you need to and hold those boundaries?
Yeah. Yeah, especially if it feels like it can be like repeated or like, oh my gosh, I've told them like 5 times that I have to pump at this time and they keep scheduling meetings or something. It's like it's just because they have not been in that lane like you have. So
Yeah,
just keep
yeah, yeah.
continuing to speak up and hold that. I love that perspective and just kind of that empowerment piece of advocating for yourself. One last question for you is I want to take a break to be home with my baby, but I'm scared I'll never get hired again. So how do you coach parents through that decision?
Yeah. Also, just another great question. And with like the job landscape changing so quickly and skills changing so quickly, it is totally understandable that this can be top of mind. My push here is while you take that break, do things to keep your skill set relevant, but to the extent you can, try not to stress on what the job market will look like when you come back. I think things are changing so fast that, yeah, like 5 years can change drastically. So keep a pulse with it. Integrate AI into your daily life because I think that will help, right? Help with meal prep. I mean, it will help your skills and help you become fluent in AI in the same way that we're like fluent in like Google search, right? Because I think that will come up in all roles at some point. Um, so stay fresh on skills like that. If there are certain skills or certificates that you have that are going to be relevant for the future, do projects, right? Or maybe like volunteer small things here and there that you can continue to keep those skills up. And focus on being that present parent, right? Because you're choosing to take this break, which should be an empowering time for you, not a stressful or anxiety ridden induced time. So then the framing that I talk to companies about when we look at parenthood and parenthood breaks is like this is professional development. It is professional development in that person that you don't have to pay for. They're paying for it themselves, right? So this goes back into okay, they're going to come back with extreme skills in prioritization, delegation, confidence, right? Asking for help, and then just things like agility, which is going to be needed more and more, right? As things move faster and faster, logistics, kind of stakeholder management. I talk about too stakeholder management with people with bad tempers. So there's a lot that you are developing in this period of parenthood. So when you're going back to work, like talk about parenthood and the development there with confidence. Keep your skills up to date or at least keep them warm, however that means for you. And then give yourself permission to not stress about the market while you're actually on that break so you can focus on being present and growing as a parent. Jobs will be there on the other side. They may look different, they may feel different. Things are changing really fast. So not going to not acknowledge that. But it doesn't help to stress about it if you're not looking right now.
Yeah. I think that's a huge piece, right? Of like maybe feeling like a little bit of like guilt or shame of like, oh, I'm not going to go back to work. I'm going to spend time with my kid. I'm only spending time with my baby, right? But that is such important work. And that's time that you won't get back with your children. Like they'll be 5 in 5 years. Like you'll never have 0 to 5 again. So if that is something that is on your heart, I love that you just talk about how you can lean into that still while also keeping a toe in if you're wanting to go back to work eventually too. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, well, any lasting thoughts for our listeners today on navigating leaves and all of the things that we discussed?
Yes, great question. I think at the end of the day, my push is around advocacy and advocating for your needs and speaking up about it. When you do, you're holding the boundaries for yourself, but you're also helping all of those around you who might be pregnant are looking up to you as a leader. So do it, speak up, and support kind of podcasts like this and others who are helping amplify that message.
Phenomenal. Yeah, it is about that community piece too. Like you are not the first to be there. You won't be the last. How can we still support one another as we all navigate through it? But Kelly, I
Yeah.
want to thank you so much for the conversation and for creating a space where working parents can feel seen, supported, and really strong and empowered in their choices. Whether you're preparing for leave, navigating a return, or trying to make sense of who you are, Kelly's work is here to remind you that you don't have to do it alone. So be sure to check out the show notes for links to Kelly's coaching programs and the Stork and Spark community. And if you're a parent trying to balance ambition and diapers, this episode is a reminder that you're not broken. It's the system that is. Until next time, remember you're doing important work both at home and in the world, and you're not alone.